You're listening to the Southampton Delivery Podcast, a podcast dedicated to the Southampton Football Club and all of the SFC fans.
If you want to have guarantees, you have to buy a wash machine.
Fonte with a scooping header.
We don't lose a match, either we win or we learn. And today we learned.
Отдача, Остин! Все-таки забил!
It's infield to Mane, 25 yards out. Lovely ball for Pella. Onside, 1-0. Buffon shot! Oh my word!
Unbelievable. We ran around the pitch like Bambi on ice. It was very, very embarrassing to watch.
And now, your host, Matt Markstone.
Dryer is off. Coffee here. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Southampton Delivery Podcast, a podcast and newsletter dedicated to the Southampton Football Club and all of the SFC fans, and available right here on southamptondelivery.com. My name is Matt Markstone. I am the host of the show, and no matter where you are, no matter how you may be listening, whether this is your first time or you've been here before, thanks for making the show part of your day. I hope that you enjoy it, and I say that no matter where you are, and I really hope that you are at home or maybe on the way to the store or in the store or at the doctor's office or somewhere that is essential. And if you're not, if you're doing something else, my question to you is why? Well, not only why would you be out doing those things at this moment when we are all collectively as a human race trying to, combat the spread of this global pandemic. But if you're doing those things, why are you listening to this while you're doing that? That doesn't really make any sense. But in the end, it is your choice to listen to this whenever you want, wherever you want, or not at all, as the majority of the world seems to do. But that's fine too, because we are here for you. And this week, obviously, the coronavirus does play a role in life once again. Things have gotten worse in many respects. In California, we are locked down. My key to freedom at this moment in time is none other than the dog that so oftentimes ruins portions of this podcast, but that's okay. That is what we can do. We can walk him. We can get out of the house. It is nice to do every once in a while. And exercise is still one of those things as long as the park isn't too crowded. But enough of that. Let's talk about this week's episode. I'm joined by Jon Weeks. You can find him on Twitter at Jon Weeks 5 and on Instagram at Jon Weeks. He's a broadcast journalist, a voiceover artist, the PA announcer at St. Mary's Stadium. And now, if you haven't heard him in any of those places, he is here on this show. And I'm looking forward to bringing you that conversation. We're going to talk about everything from his life growing up, becoming a Saints fan, getting into football, becoming a journalist, and eventually winding up as the PA announcer. We'll walk through a little bit of the season as well. And really, it's just a great chat with a great guy. And I hope that it brightens your day in some respect. And whether you're listening to this as you cook dinner or because you just want a few minutes away from your children who you suddenly have to now teach at home, you're welcome from teachers all across the world. I hope that it brightens your day a little bit. And I hope that, it's just enough Saints chat to kind of keep you going, keep you motivated and all that stuff. And I just also want to say that I hope that everybody out there is safe and well and that you continue to be that way because it is difficult times, different times, and all those things. So enough of this. We'll get to the chat now with Jon Weeks, and I hope that you enjoy it, and I will talk to you on the other side. We'd like to welcome to the Southampton Delivery Podcast, Jon Weeks. You can find him on Twitter at Jon Weeks 5 and on Instagram at Jon Weeks. You can also hear his voice at St. Mary's when we ever get back there. He is the PA announcer, also a journalist, and a voiceover artist. So, Jon, welcome to the show, and thanks for joining me on. We're recording on Mother's Day, so happy Mother's Day past to everybody, and welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Yeah, not a mother myself, but I'll be wishing my mom happy Mother's Day.
Yeah, that's what I meant, for sure. I never realized this is like how consumed I am. I maybe everybody's like this, but I didn't realize that Mother's Day just wasn't one holiday all over the world. That like different countries have different days. Because our Mother's Day is not for several more weeks. And when I saw Mother's Day trending today, I freaked out because obviously most things are closed. I didn't buy anything for my mom. My kids don't have a card from my wife. Luckily, I don't have to worry about that for a little while. So,
pretty selfish of the countries to just not to agree on a day, isn't it? Really?
It'd be nice. But it is what it is. But how are you on this Sunday? I don't know what the weather's like there. It's going to rain here all day, but we're inside anyway because we kind of have to be.
That's it. Yeah, I mean, lucky for us, it's quite sunny. It's probably quite Californian weather here. Actually, we're doing all right. No clouds. Beautiful. All
right. Well, I'm glad. I'm sorry you can't go out and enjoy it all that much. And I bet today would be a nice day to be down at St. Mary's with your view of the pitch from the PA announcing booth.
Oh, very much so. Yeah, miss it already.
Yeah. Because I think we're talking about the time we should have been playing against Arsenal. So it is. Am I right? Am I right in saying that?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I mean it's been rearranged anyway because they did well in Cup. I can't remember which it was. I think it might have been the FA Cup.
Right.
That's basically moved. Yeah, it has been moved anyway. So it wouldn't happen anyway this Sunday. But yeah.
It just shows you how much this thing is just throwing me. I've stopped paying attention to way too much. Or way too many things, which is not a good look if you're trying to do a podcast about things. But we'll figure it out. But anyway, people may or may not know you. Obviously, you're now the PA announcer at St. Mary's, in addition to being a journalist and doing a bunch of other stuff. But I guess I wanted to go back and just talk a little bit with you about you kind of being a Saints fan, and did you grow up as a Saints fan, or what was your kind of attachment to the team, maybe?
So I'm Southampton born and bred, so sort of been drilled into me from a young age. Got into Saints mostly probably when I was in secondary school, which is sort of high school for you guys. When it was the sort of James Beattie days. And from then on, my dad took me to my first game, and we sort of went from there, and absolutely just loved it ever since.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite player in the time that you've been able to watch the team?
Oh, I mean, there's several really. I think, recently with Maya Yoshida going, he's been a pretty big one for me because he's been such a legend and been with us for so many years and seen the rise of Saints and, absolute exemplary sportsman for me.
Yeah, absolutely. He's one of those guys where you didn't want to see him leave simply because he just seems like a guy that just is very likable and very kind of, somebody you'd want to be around for an extended period of time. Unlike, some of the people who leave who you're kind of like, well, I'm glad that period is over. But of course, when they're here, you want them to do well. And it's nice that Yoshida's over in Italy with Gabbiadini, and hopefully everybody is safe and Gabbiadini's healing up well, and all of that stuff. But and thinking back to going, does your dad still attend matches and things like that?
Well, he's not actually a Saints fan, ironically. So he just used to take us because obviously it was nearby and I did support Saints.
Okay.
But yeah, well, the awkward thing is, before I got the job, we'd always used to come and watch Saints v Everton at St Mary's. That's what you usually get tickets for, so you could see them.
Okay.
Obviously, I've got the job. He can't come with me to those games, but I think he'll probably still come and just sort of listen, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely. And so he's an Everton fan, so he's not having the greatest season of all time this year either.
No, no.
And I guess, is he from up north, or did he just happen to fall in love with Everton at some point?
Yeah, it was just I think he moved around a lot as a kid, and I think at one point in school, one of his friends was a big Everton fan, and he just randomly got the bug for Everton when he was younger, and has gone from there really. But it is a bit random. When I tell people, I'm like, but he's not from Liverpool, and he never grew up there.
Well, I mean, we have a lot of Everton fans here in the States. You look at Tim Howard and Landon Donovan and things like that. Like, people are drawn to them. I couldn't do it. I don't know. There was something about them. I just watched them play one time and I was like, I don't like that. And it was that easy. So, I guess maybe I dodged a bullet there because I don't know if I could live through, all of the Liverpool fans giving me grief this season and last season too. But it is what it is. But, I guess for you and kind of going into to moving on from secondary school for you and going into journalism, I mean, what took you that route? I mean, was it the writing? Was it the kind of, were you interested in kind of, I guess just diving into stories and kind of uncovering things, or what was the draw for you?
Well, for me, it was, I knew what I was good at school. After school, we went to college, which I know is confusing for you because that's our university in America. Confusing, but basically college is like the last 2 years of high school, where you're between 16 and 18 years old. and all the subjects I chose were things like media, English language. We had a course called communication and culture. And all these, I looked at all the things and I was like, what do all these things match up to? And journalism was it. So I basically joined the dots, if you will. And one of the things we had at college was they set up a radio studio for us to do practice shows on. And we did that for only 3 or 4 weeks, but I loved it. And I thought, yeah, this is what I want to do.
Okay. And so now you spend a lot of your time behind a microphone and all that stuff?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, so I work for Global, which own Heart and Capital brands in the UK. And so I read the news for them, and it's awesome.
So since you started doing that, I mean, what's a typical day like for you when you're in? And I guess one of the things that I always wonder about, and I'll ask you about it when we get to the PA announcing, is how do you kind of get yourself excited to talk about things or in the right mood to talk about things? Because you got to be excited on the radio and like fill not just a certain time, but have a certain tone. How do you kind of get yourself ready for that, given sometimes that it's probably, things aren't going well, in the outside world, I guess.
Yeah, well, that's the sort of the tough thing about it, I suppose. I mean, I do the early shift. I'm in the morning, so I'm up at about 4 a.m, which is interesting. And then work starts at 5. And yeah, I know what you mean. If I imagine from that, it's anyone listening to that will go, how can you possibly be enthusiastic about things at 5 a.m? But to be honest, that you get a thrill out of reading, and it's strange because, it's not like you're stood in front of, hundreds of thousands of people. Everyone's listening somewhere else. You can't see them, you can't hear them. As far as you know, they're not necessarily there. Just you in a room with a microphone. But it's the sort of thrill of knowing that what you're saying has an impact on so many people, hundreds and thousands of people. And the aim is to sort of deliver it, especially at Global. They want you to deliver things in a way that sort of makes people feel a certain way, rather than just hearing the facts or, just some sentences lined up against each other and just saying, oh, it's just someone saying this, that, or the other. They want you to be a bit more creative with it and have an impact really on people. And that's the sort of motivation for me. I'm always thinking, right, how can I be, because I'm quite a creative person. All I'm thinking is, how can I make this interesting? How can I make this different? How can I make this worth listening to, essentially?
Yeah, because there's a difference between just reading the facts off of a transfer marked page, right? And actually talking about the player and what those stats mean and like you said, making people care. And I think we talked before we were on, your training is magazine journalism. How different is writing for radio versus writing for print, I guess?
Yeah, well, totally different, really. I mean, for print, you can imagine a newspaper, you've got, columns are massive, really, especially compared to radio, where you've got about a minute and a half to get several stories in. So the real tough part is cutting it down, what you're saying, to make it A, as simple as possible, B, as interesting as possible, and C, in a way, as short as possible. So it is tough. I mean, yeah, like I said, I've got about 1 minute and a half at the top of each hour, and then I think we have about a minute at half past the hour in the mornings. And it's just about being concise, but also actually delivering information, and also making it relatively fun as well, to be fair.
Yeah, because I mean, people are tuning in at specific times to hear that on their way to work or in between whatever it is, and they're kind of relying on that. And if you come on and you're just flat, or you don't get all the stuff across, then all of a sudden it's like, whoa, what happened there? And I think like we all have this association with what we expect the radio to sound like, and then if you sound too different, I guess it's probably not great.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. It's that there's a reason a lot of things sound the same in radio over the years, because there's things that work. And that's the challenge, really, is with the creativity side of things. It's a case of trying to find things that work, that are maybe different to the norm, but actually, if you're listening, it sounds right. I mean, another thing with especially with the news on radio, I mean, you're in someone's home most of the time, or you're in someone's car, or your voices, and it just seems like you have to make things a lot more conversational. In a newspaper, you can write things out, factual language and long words and everything. On radio, it's for everyone, and it's like you're chatting to a mate, essentially, in the news especially. So you've got to be making it sound interesting and, like I say, concise and fun as well.
Yeah. I mean, was there somebody in radio that you kind of have learned a lot from, or was it kind of you got to figure it out? And did you start behind the microphone, or did you start kind of just doing other things, and then eventually you worked your way up to that point?
Yeah, well, my first job was on the Isle of Wight, actually. Which, have you heard of the Isle of Wight?
Mm-hmm.
That little blob, like at the bottom of the UK.
My understanding of it is that, half the island supports one team and half the island supports Southampton, and you got to take a boat or a ferry back and forth, right?
Yeah, that's right. And there's a lot of debate on the island about whether or not to have a bridge over instead of a ferry and how much it would cost. Anyway, but yeah, so I worked there, and I was lucky enough to basically go on air behind the microphone quite early on. And they obviously liked my voice and things like that, but that was quite nerve-wracking. First time doing that. I was quite lucky to have a good team, so I did it. Came out of the studio and everyone sort of cheered and stuff, which was quite nice. Yeah, which you don't imagine necessarily would happen. But yeah, in terms of learning the trade, it's just all through bosses and colleagues, and I've worked at a few different companies, a few different stations, and just learn as you go, really. And it's different to other jobs because you're learning new stuff all the time, really, and different bosses and different staff have different opinions about things, and you can pick things up from different people and sort of hone everything in your own way, which I think is a real benefit.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you take all of that and you move forward to where you're at now, and hopefully you just kind of, like you said, continue to pick those things up. And it sounds exciting and nerve wracking, and I kind of always think about my job. I get up in front of students every day, and like some days it's like I start teaching at 7:30 in the morning, and it's like, all right, like 7:15, like you got to be like switched on and ready to go, and because if you come in or the kids come in and you're flat, then that hour is gone. The kids are like, well, we're not doing this today, and it's like, well, that you can't do that. So I can only imagine it's 100 times worse for you, especially going on at 5. I know what that feels like as well, because generally that's what time we start recording the show is between 5 and 5:30 a.m. most Sundays. So I understand that. But how many days a week are you on, and then how long is your shift each morning?
So it's just normal sort of 8 hours shift, and I'm on Monday to Friday, and sometimes weekends. You can sort of pick and choose if you want to do a weekend most of the time, which is cool.
Yeah. Are you on air all 8 hours, or do you guys do 4 on and then 4 off?
Yeah, no, on for 7 of the hours, and then you've got an hour at the end, just doing other bits and helping the guys in the afternoon, basically.
Dang, that's a long time, but
yeah.
sounds awesome. And we should say that's not the only thing you do, and if people hear your voice now and it sounds familiar, it could be from the radio, but it could also be from your job at St. Mary's, which you took over this year. And we should say, like, you didn't come to it in the best of circumstances. Obviously, Justin Gladys passing away, leaving that vacancy after having done it for, I think, 18 consecutive seasons, which is, was a loss for the Saints community. I mean, for you, I mean, obviously a big kind of opportunity. What was it like, kind of even just hearing about the job and deciding to apply for the job? Where did that kind of come from?
Yeah, well, I mean, initially, certainly huge shoes to fill with Justin passing away, and I didn't know him myself, but I know lots of people who did, and massive part of Saints being the PA, as you say, 18 seasons. But yeah, for me, it was actually an ex-colleague sent a link to the job that had gone online, saying, "Oh, what do you think of this?" And I hadn't seen it yet, and I thought, yes. When I saw it, I thought that would be amazing. Wasn't necessarily convinced that I'd be getting it. I thought I'll sort of throw my hat in the ring and send some audio over and just see how I go, basically.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it came from a friend sending a link, and I went from there. And then I was lucky enough to get an interview. And then I didn't hear for about a week or so, and I thought, oh, fair enough. Someone else got the job. Someone's better. That's fine. And then eventually did hear from my now boss saying, congratulations, you got the job, when can you start, basically? And yeah, I was blown away. But what a way to A, progress my career, but also to be able to watch Saints all the time.
Yeah. And from a particularly unique vantage point, I think. And I want to ask you about some of what your day looks like from there, and maybe what some of the differences are between just getting to go watch the team that you love and then kind of working for the team, and what that is. But you work with a fantastic crew of people or cast of characters. We've had Tom Deacon on the show, we've had Michael Kern on the show, and getting little bits of insight from them in terms of what their day looks like and things like that. I think, Tom always makes me laugh. He's told me stories of being in the tunnel and being told to like stop celebrating or stop, being upset by certain things. And I think it's just like, it's kind of, it would be difficult because I sit here and say horrible things when I watch Saints, and now you kind of are in this space where you have to kind of be a professional, but also still once again bring some life and energy to the stadium. And there's been St. Mary's has not always been the most convincing in terms of atmosphere, but things are changing, and as the team plays better and better, I think we'll get more and more behind it. But I think, is there pressure on you to kind of bring some energy in that regard?
Yeah, there is a bit. I mean, to be fair, one of the great things about the job is the team. The team that I'm in, like you say, with Tom and Michael, is a great team. Awesome. Like, the guys are brilliant. They've all sort of helped me and welcomed me in, and everyone's on that same sort of level with banter and things like that. So it's really good, and everyone is actually really good at their jobs, which you would have learned from those guys that you've interviewed at least. But yeah, I mean, this is the thing. I mean, the way that things have been moving over the years at football, 30 years ago, maybe not even that much, you might think, going to a football game, you go in, you watch football, you maybe have a beer, maybe have a burger, you go home. Now it's, look at how big the Premier League is.
Yeah.
It's massively about the experience, massively. And, all clubs are doing it. All clubs are trying to make it as much of a day out for fans as possible. So, I know you're talking to Michael in the last episode about the fan zone. That's a new addition to St. Mary's, which difficult to appreciate, obviously, if you're not local, if you don't come to the games, such as yourself. But for fans going to the game, huge. There's so much that goes on. I did not realise, because a lot of fans will come in and aim to get to the stadium for kickoff time, just before kickoff. Come in to the stadium. Bit of half time, inside getting a burger or a pie or whatever, and then back up and watching the rest of the game. But for people who come earlier to matches, there is so much to see and to do. And, outside the stadium, there's so many things, and charities getting involved in the Saints Foundation and activities for kids, and, there's so much to organise, which I did not realise until I sort of, my first day, really, I started on doing the PA work. It's mad. It's mind blowing. So the pressure is there, but it's not just on me. It's on this whole entertainment team that I'm in to make things as enjoyable and different and cool and an experience for everyone as much as possible.
Yeah. So I guess the atmosphere kind of builds from well before kickoff, before people even enter the stadium. It's just kind of approaching the stadium and getting, like you said, getting involved with all of the other things going on that kind of sets the tone for as people get in and get ready to watch the team, I guess.
Yeah, and I mean, it's something like I say, you don't think about, but I get in. I mean, people might listen to this, might think, oh, PA announcer, you rock up just before kickoff, game, really shout out a couple of goals, go home. But it's not that. It's get in. We get in about on a 3:00 kickoff game. We get in at about 11:30 in the morning. Sit with the team that I'm in. We all have a team debrief about what's going on at halftime. What sort of order we're doing things in, what notes, special notes, what's different this game to the next game. There's a lot to think about, and everyone obviously has to be on the same page, so we all know what's coming up at different points. And there's loads of things going on, like they do mental health awareness in the Premier League now, so sometimes there'll be a day when that's going on, there's other things happening. Half time is always different, and I mean, one of the things we had recently with half time was a proposal. Which is, again, one of the things you might not have seen necessarily. I don't think they put it on TV, but proposal on the at half time, and that was good because it was a couple who run a charity, and the guy had set it up with our team, and our boss came in and told us about it. We were all getting buzzing, going, oh yeah, no, this is going to be hilarious, it's going to be great, hoping that the fans would get behind them. So the premise was this couple were coming on to talk a bit about their charity, and then they both take a penalty at half time. So it was funny being one of the people who knew, because I felt a bit guilty for knowing, because I thought, well, this is her sort of day really to be proposed to. I know it's coming. But we were in the box watching, and obviously you had Tom and also Steve and Michael, who do the halftime stuff, down chatting to them. And Tom was brilliant actually, because he basically set them up and was chatting to them before, just ahead of the proposal, and it was brilliant. And the crowd cheered when he asked her. He got down on one knee. It was brilliant, and that's the sort of stuff that sort of makes it a bit more of an experience for people.
Because I can imagine myself as a teenager, or even as a slightly intoxicated, 21 or 22-year-old, really having a go at those people for doing that. But I mean, were you guys at all nervous that the crowd wasn't going to get behind him and do it?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say nervous. I mean, it's one of those things. If the crowd didn't get behind them, it'd still be great for her, because I mean, she's in front of 30,000 people being proposed to, and it's still nerve-wracking for him because he's got to propose in front of 30,000 people.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think the fans are actually quite good at Saints, and they will react to that sort of thing happening, and they did, thankfully, which was great. Yeah, it was just excellent, and I think for those things like that are a bit different, and maybe not everyone sees it coming, the fans definitely get behind them.
Nice. Well, I'm glad that stuff works out, and I guess that kind of stuff would always be, like you said, one of those things that I don't think about. I didn't see it on TV. But yeah, I can only imagine that, you come in and they're like, hey, proposal today, little kids doing dizzy penalties next week. It's got to be different all the time. You mentioned you come in, you have a debrief, you go through. What else is involved in kind of your match day routine once that meeting's over? What are your responsibilities, I guess, as you build up to kickoff?
Yeah, well, it's we do all the tests basically. Once we finish the debrief, everyone goes up into the box, which is where I see, which you would have seen the pictures of the view from, and we run through all the things that we're doing in terms of what goes up on the big screens, what music is coming out and when, making sure the cameras all work, the halftime stuff and the pre-match stuff, microphone checks, obviously, which I'm quite happy we do that. To be honest. It'd be a bit of a nightmare otherwise. Yeah, so it's all of that stuff, and I mean, for me personally, I quite like to make sure I'm getting all the pronunciations right for like the away teams,
okay,
all the players. So a lot of it is me going through like YouTube clips and trying to find like teams where they say their names, or like YouTube videos of players just when they've signed, and just hoping I hear them say their name, just so I get it right. I mean, most of them I do know just from watching things like Match of the Day or just watching games, but there's always one or two I think, do I know this? Should I check? Yeah, I'm going to check, just to make sure, because I don't want to like read out a name and it be wrong and everyone think I'm an idiot.
Yeah. Well, I mean, your name, I imagine growing up, most people didn't mess your name up. When I was growing up, my name was constantly messed up. You got printed a lot as Mark Matt Stone or Mark Stone or other things like that. So I'm used to that. And it was like my mom was always one of those people who would just yell at you at your job as I'm being announced playing sport or whatever. My mom would yell to get the name right. And it's like, that was always one of those things where like I could block out a lot of things. But even, playing in college and stuff, like I could still hear my mom yelling at the PA announcer to get my name right, which is just really, really annoying. But I love her. So
it's cool people like your mum that I'm doing it for then.
Yes. So thank you. And thank you for the extra effort you're putting in. And I wanted to ask it, is there ever a player that you're just like, I really hope they don't score? Like, or I hope they don't come off the bench. Has there ever been an away player where you're just like, I just can't quite nail the name?
There have definitely been a couple. I can't remember sort of one or two specifically. Sam Maximan, the Newcastle player, that's always a difficult one, because you look at the word and you think, I read this completely, especially when I'm used to saying the Saint, and part of his surname is Saint.
Yeah.
I was just thinking, part of me was thinking, please don't. Yeah, I know you did, which was great, but I didn't. I got it right, thankfully. I'd written it down sort of phonetically, so I got it right. But yeah, there are a few every now and then, and I see the team sheet and I'm like, can you just not be substituted or not score, or just just please. But that's why I like to do that work, just so that I'm ready in case it happens.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure you come across plenty of weird pronunciations and things on the radio as well. And then so for you, kind of as the game's going on, I guess what's the most stressful part of the job? And granted, and I'm not trying to say that the job is, I'm not going to say it's not stressful, because I would be stressed out the entire time, every single match day. But it is fun. But I mean, what is the one part you worry about maybe more than everything else? I
mean, it's a double stress really, because obviously you've got the job, but initially you are sort of watching as a fan, And as any football fan knows, it's stressful watching your football team, regardless. Even if you're doing well, you're still thinking, oh, what if this happens? You're engaged in the game and focusing. So there's that first initial layer of stress as a football fan, hoping your team does well, etc., etc. On top of that, you've then got knowing that you're going to have to read things out to 30,000 people, potentially that they won't like, potentially that they will like. So that's another layer. But I say probably for me, the most stressful thing about it often is when, actually at the moment, when VAR calls are being made, because we basically have in the box with me is another guy who's listening to the VAR feed, essentially, which I think is the same one that the referees are listening to.
Okay.
So if something controversial looks like it's happened, but the game's kept playing, he will say, oh, it sounds like they're checking this, or they might be checking this. It's a case of just getting to grips with that in my head and thinking, okay, I might have to say something here, I might have to do something quite quickly. It's things like that, and also hearing out. We usually have someone telling us about the substitutions, who's going to come on, who's about to come on or off, and it's basically preparing for those things quite quickly when perhaps there's a goal about to be scored, or it looks like something's happening a bit controversial in the game, and I'm trying to concentrate as a fan because I want to know what's going to happen. I'm trying to concentrate as a commentator so I know what I've got to say next, and I've got to concentrate on someone in my ear telling me what to do. So there's that kind of thing that's the sort of element of the job that perhaps people wouldn't necessarily think of. And maybe even just saying it like that, it might sound quite simple, but it's the concentration levels are quite high in that sort of scenario.
Yeah, I can only imagine, late in the game, because most substitutions are happening at critical points, right? Like people are trying to make changes to impact the game, or maybe you have a corner and now they're not coming on, or they are coming on, and I would get lost. Because I think if you don't have the outline that has a game on it, but my notes for the first half tend to be much more thorough than the second half, where I'm basically just typing this season been a bunch of curse words, and then a bunch of other horrible things that I don't then read on here. And I can only imagine kind of what it's like to be there and be live and have to kind of get all that stuff right. As you've gone through this and you've gone, I don't know if we will finish the season or what. So you've been there for most of the season. What's one thing that you've learned from doing this job that maybe, like you said, you didn't quite expect?
Yeah, I think it is that that sort of element of, well, there's a couple of things. I mean, first of all, I didn't realise how much of a team there was behind not just the sort of match day experience, but also, like I was saying, things outside with the fan zone outside and all the other things I was talking about. I did not realise how much work went into it, which I guess you wouldn't anyway, because if you're a fan, like I said, you just rock up, maybe do one or two of these things, but you don't see all the work that goes behind organising them all, and that's the most impressive thing for me. Outside of that, with the actual job, I didn't know what to expect, because obviously I've never done PA announcing at a football club, let alone my football club, which is obviously great. But it's all the things that go around your job, that are happening around your job, and how you sort of introduce things and things that get introduced around you and things like that. They're the things really that took me back a bit, but also impressed me with how things run at the club.
Okay, yeah. Just thinking, I mean, yeah, I don't know. It seems like there's so much more that goes on than people would realize, and I was kind of thinking, as a kid, you don't realize all the things your parents do. You kind of think things just happen. Dinner just gets made. The house just gets clean. Like it's magic, and really it's not magic. There's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes that, and I imagine it's the same way that I look at the football club and what happens on a match day, and maybe most fans do as well, where it's just, there are all these things that are happening that we're just not aware of. And, I'm just going to choose to sit back and just appreciate it and know that there's a lot that I don't quite understand. And remember not to yell at you if you get the name wrong. I mean, normally we would be able to talk about an actual match that has just happened, but of course there are larger, kind of more important things going on in the world, which means we don't have that. But I wanted to kind of reflect on some of the things that have happened this season. I'll start with kind of what has been your match that is stood out to you as being kind of the most enjoyable or your favorite so far, and then what were some of the things that made that match stand out from some of the others?
Yeah, I think I was thinking about this, and actually I think our New Year's Day game against Tottenham Obviously a 1-0 win. Perhaps not the result a lot of people were expecting, because obviously Tottenham at least were at the time doing okay, and obviously they're now considered one of the top 6 in the Premier League. Mourinho has come in and been in for around about a month, I think. And yeah, we just had the awesome run that was December and got ourselves out of trouble. And this was sort of another game to add to that. And it was brilliant. I mean, Tottenham weren't very good on the day, and we were, which was brilliant. And to do that at home, with a home record not being amazing so far this season, it was just brilliant. And one of the things, obviously, was that the Danny Ings goal, where he lifted it over Toby Alderweireld, who's obviously an ex-Saint. Yeah, that was just brilliant. I don't think anyone necessarily saw it coming, but it was just such a good goal. An assist from Jack Stevens as well from the back. That was great. And I think as well as that, something else that made it good was the sort of banter that Jose Mourinho was getting from our fans.
Yeah.
Especially the chant, "You're not special anymore," which I thought was brilliant. Yeah, it was a good game, because again, it was a weird one, because New Year's Day, I don't think I've done anything on New Year's Day my whole life until this year because of that game. It's, you know, for everyone usually it's a lay on the sofa, get a Domino's kind of day. But yeah, to go to work, I was sort of thinking, it's a bit frustrating. I can't, go out and get completely drunk on the night before. But at the same time, I thought, no, it'd be great. New Year's Day football game. And so made sure I got enough sleep, got in, and yeah, it turned out to be an awesome game.
Yeah. I think Boxing Day and New Year's Day are always difficult matches to watch or pay attention to, because they happen quite early. I think a couple of seasons ago, we played Spurs on Boxing Day, and I want to say it started at like 3:30 or 4 in the morning, and I was not in a good place. And having to get up and watch that game and then just watch us get absolutely destroyed was a bit frustrating. But I'm glad that you were able to it was you probably felt better for it anyway, having to be in and then have something to do the next day to keep you honest, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. It's I should say keeping yourself honest, but also just going to football. I mean, you can't really go wrong, even if you're hungover or tired or not in the best mood. It changes your mood, and it's you can't really ask for much more from a day than that. Yeah.
We'll go from one extreme to the other here. I imagine I know what's coming when I ask the question, but maybe not. I won't lead you too far. But I mean, has there been a match that was tougher than all of the rest, and one that you would kind of not want to repeat if you could?
I think for me, it's actually the Wolves game that we played recently, and it's only because, again, like I say, this was just after beating Leicester. We'd won several games on the trot. We just had December, which was amazing. It's after that Tottenham game. We'd beaten Huddersfield in the FA Cup. The optimism was at the highest it's been this season, I think. And we went into this game against Wolves. Obviously, Wolves are a great side, and they've done really well again this season. And some of the players they've got are awesome. But it just felt like this was going to be another win. We were going to continue, this upward trend and just keep going. And it's just, I think for me, it's just the fact that we started so well. 15 minutes in, Bednarek scores. Then Shane Long scores. You're 2-0 up in the first half. You're thinking, this is right, brilliant. We could just wrap this up now, lads. Easy, simple. And, not to take anything away from Wolves, because they, like I say, they're a great side, and they showed it because they scored 3 goals past us after that. And it was just to be on such a high at half time, especially for us in our team, when things go on at half time, we're doing things for the fans, and spirits are so high, and we're like, yeah, and it gives everyone, especially people like Tom who are pitch side, to give them a boost. When it comes to chatting to fans or whatever they're doing, or the dizzy penalties, and then to finish the game and you're on a low, and that was really frustrating for me. But like I said, it's football. It's there's ups and downs, and we have sort of bounced back in a couple of games since.
Yeah. And after a match like that, I mean, when does your day end? You're in at 11:30 or so, 3 o'clock kickoff. Yeah. What time do you finally get out of there?
So it's not too long after the end of the match. We hang around, so the players go off, and then we sometimes have a few sort of announcements after that. So once the players are off the pitch, do the final announcements, telling everyone when the next game is and wishing everyone a safe trip home. And then it's just a quick sort of debrief with everyone at the end of the game, and then we go home. So it's not like you're hanging around for ages after the game. There's not really too much to do for us. Once it's finished, we've sort of done our job. We've done the entertainment team package, and we can head off. So it's all right, but it's because of the traffic. It's never a quick journey home. So it's a case you've got the time to digest the performance.
Well, yeah, and then I mean, all of you, I think on the entertainment side of things, at least the crowd facing portion, I think you guys all work elsewhere, right? You guys all have other things that you do. So you come in, you do the thing for the match day, and then you have to go worry about other stuff that happens. And like you said, the traffic around St. Mary's, I've only ever dealt with it one time, and that was enough. I will take the train from now on and walk. Next time I'm anywhere close. And yeah, I can only imagine what that's like. And I guess I don't know. It would be hard for me to kind of turn around and walk away after a match and try to refocus. I don't do well. I do really well if I can focus on one thing only. Unfortunately, that's not how life really works for most people. So I guess I'm pretty lucky. And honestly, I was planning on you. I thought you were going to wind up saying the Leicester game there, and I'm glad you didn't. So we'll just move on.
Oh, I wasn't there. I wasn't actually there for that game, thankfully.
Okay.
I hadn't done at that point. But yeah, apart from that, obviously that probably is the one.
Yeah. All right. All right. Well, first of all, I would just want to say thanks for talking in an extended portion about the job and all that stuff. And I hope the listeners enjoy that. Obviously, we don't have a match to talk about, and trying to keep it Saints related and positive and all that stuff. So it's been a pleasure to talk to you about that. I have a couple of questions from some listeners. We didn't get a ton in. I think people are trying to. It's hard to come up with questions when I think people are not really sure what's happening with the football club and all that stuff. But we did have one from a patron of the show, and patrons get priority for having their questions answered each and every week on the show. So Luke Millard asked for last week's guest. We didn't get it on the show because I missed it. But he said, if you had to name your kid after one Saints FC player, who would it be? And for me, if I go first here, I have a kid, and my name is Matt. It'd be pretty easy to go with Letitia. But I think people would think I'm being selfish, but I would still do it just because I could always pass it off and say, no, it's him, not me. If you had to do that, what Saints player would you look to use as a name?
It's difficult. It's difficult to see past Matt Letitia. Like, I think I'd probably be the same. I can get away with it because my name isn't Matt like yours. But yeah, I mean, he's, as well as being a player, I mean, he's brilliant everywhere else now. On Twitter, he's hilarious. He's obviously on Sky Sports doing bits and stuff now, which again he's brilliant at. And I've met him a couple of times with in my work as a journalist, and interviewed him a couple of times, and he's always been great, and he's a huge character for Southampton. So I'll be boring. I'll say Matt Letitia. All
right, that's fine with me. I don't think anybody's gonna doubt you or be upset with you there. I can say that Freddie from The Ugly Inside was nice enough. My kind of one interaction with Matt Letitia was when I did the 100th episode of the show. Freddie managed to pull him aside, and Matt sent me a video from Freddie's phone about just talking about the show and saying thanks and all that stuff and congratulations. And I was like, I'm sitting at school, and then I open up my phone on a 10-minute break, and it's like all of a sudden there's this, and it's like, well, please make sure you save this so you don't ruin it and lose it somewhere. And it means a lot. And the fact that he would do that, I think for me, says a lot about him. And like you said, he's funny everywhere else, and makes it makes for a good follow on Twitter.
Yeah, definitely.
Anyway, if you had to be quarantined with a former player, we'll go former player since you work for the club. I won't put you on the spot with anybody who's currently there. Because we're under quarantine here in California. I mentioned in the newsletter last week, my wife actually tested positive for the coronavirus. Her symptoms are really mild. She's fine. We're all fine, but we have to stay inside and be 14 days symptom free before we can really do anything. If you had to be quarantined with a former Saints player, which one would you pick and why?
It's difficult. I mean, I think it's between two for me, and it would be either Ricky Lambert or Kelvin Davis, just because both of them seem like, from stories and also from other places you've seen interviews or heard them, they seem like massive characters, and they were massive characters at times at Saints, which were probably the best in the last 20 years, really. The rise up from League One, the stories these guys have got must be amazing. So yeah, if we were quarantined, they'd have plenty of time to chat to me about it. So I'd say probably one of those two, Kevin Davis or Ricky Lambert, definitely.
All right. I won't ask you who you least like to be quarantined with, just because I don't want to put you in a weird spot in terms of your job. Even though I would like to know, I won't put that on the air. But yeah, I imagine you kind of, I'm not sure who I would want, because you want somebody who's going to like clean up. There's nothing worse than being around somebody who won't clean up after themselves or is just an absolute disaster. And I don't know if you dealt with roommates when you were at university or not, but a lot of us have had people who just don't clean up after themselves. That gets on my nerves a little bit. But yeah, you also want somebody who's going to be fun. And I think those two guys would, like you said, be a lot of fun and have a lot of stories to share from their careers and from their time at Saints. And I mean, if you haven't seen that picture of Kelvin Davis at some point, then he is obviously a massive character. And we'll just leave it there, because if you don't know what I'm talking about, Google it. You'll find it eventually. But yeah, Jon, I just want to say thank you. And before we go, is there anything else that you'd like to kind of talk about or discuss or say, or anything else?
Yeah, well, I'm just sort of hoping that we can get football back and going again. Obviously, it's a very difficult situation for everyone all round. I miss it as a fan, but also as a job, really at St Mary's. But yeah, it would be great to get football back at some point. There's a lot of this debate about it at the moment, isn't there? About when should it go ahead again? Should it go ahead? Should they call it a day? Should they just write off the season? I think it needs to be finished one way or another. And if we have to wait a few months, then I say go for it.
Yeah, well, I guess that does bring up something I would actually like to ask you. And in terms of, if the season were to go ahead now, behind closed doors, as somebody who works with the crowd and is in charge of that thing, like how much of a miss is that for the club potentially, and the players, and how much does that change the dynamic of the game if we go ahead with it with no crowd in the stands?
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult. I think that it's difficult to sort of speculate, because it's all depends on how the players see it. Ideally, no one would want that. Everyone would want coronavirus to clear off tomorrow and we could just carry on as normal. But I think it depends on the players, really, and how they see it. I think fans always give players a boost. But at the same time, would players be a bit more relaxed if they felt like behind closed doors there was a bit less pressure? I don't know. It's difficult. I think Premier League players are at that level because they respond to the pressure, and the fans help in that way. And it's a difficult one, really. I don't want to say this, that, or the other, because I'm not sure what the best solution is, and
Sure.
I don't think anyone necessarily does so far. But yeah, that's what I think. I think it's a difficult one to call. But I think I speak for everyone. Just say we just want the football back.
Yeah. Well, I was, at one point it looked like the United States was trending more towards shutting everything down, and the Premier League was like, we're going for it, we're going ahead. And then, Mikel Arteta obviously turned up, having tested positive. Callum Hudson-Odoi tested positive. And then it went like, oh no, I'm going to have several months off of work and no football to watch, and it all got very real. And obviously, it's much bigger than just football. But it is one of those things that this is most weekend mornings from about 4 a.m. to about 9 a.m. That's kind of what I do. Is I get to sit down and just kind of enjoy match after match after match, and I miss it. I miss watching the players. I miss watching. Trying to analyze the game and just texting about it with friends and all of that stuff. I miss all of that. It's like a part of my my routine is gone, and I can only imagine what it's like for people who each and every weekend get up. Some people come in from Salisbury, so they have a journey to make or other places, and that kind of part of their life now is gone. And so many people use football kind of as an escape, that now that escape isn't there, and this is maybe the time we need it the most.
Yeah, I absolutely agree, and you can tell it's one of the sort of things where you almost don't realise, because it's so normal, it's so everyday. Football's almost year round most years these days. It was going to be the Euros this year, but obviously not anymore. And I think that it's something you don't realise until it's gone. It's just that sort of classic saying, until something's gone, you don't realise how much you miss it. And it's a weird thing to say, because it's not like it's a loved one, or it's something that's like your job that you love or whatever. Obviously for me it is, thankfully. But it's not a normal thing necessarily to miss as much as I think a lot of people are.
Yeah, it feels selfish to complain about it not being there. But at the same time, I'm still going to, because it is something that I miss. And I think my wife has noticed how much I miss it, because she's like, man, you are irritable. And I'm like, it's just, I don't like being cooped up. I don't like being able to not have my routine. It's like all of that stuff that kind of plays into it, and not being able to see the team play, it just makes me mad. But I guess that's what YouTube is for. And, I'll continue to, I imagine all of the YouTube channels are getting lots and lots of hits as people try to find highlights and things like that. Trying to stay, I guess, just satiated with football.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's sort of what I've been doing. I was watching a video earlier of some of the worst own goals in the Premier League. And I think it's all that kind of stuff is going to start trending massively, I think, as people try and get their fix. Yeah.
I've been kind of like, I've rolled my eyes a couple of times at some of the stuff that some of the networks have put out as, we're just going to run. I think they ran goals of the season. They ran every single goal in the Premier League season from like 2005 on. They just were going to play every single goal. It was like however many hours that is of goals. And I was just like these are okay, but like there's no context to them. Sometimes it's like literally it's like 4 seconds a highlight, and it's just like I don't have time to read the player's name, and then the ball's in the back of the net, and then they're moving on. It's just like I don't really want to watch that, but I'll look for Saints highlights and try to learn a little bit more about the history of the club, because I guess that's why I'm here. So I just want to say thank you again for doing this. It's been a pleasure to chat with you, and I'm sorry it didn't kind of come under better circumstances, but I appreciate you taking the time to do this, and I just want to say thanks.
No worries. Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate you asking me on, and hopefully once things are back up and running again, we can do a debrief of the game. Yeah, I would love that, and as long as you are up for it, you're always welcome. You're always welcome here. So if people can hear you again on the radio, you will be on, like you said, Monday through Friday, and once football is back at St. Mary's, you'll be back there as well. If they want to follow you on Twitter, it's at Jon Weeks 5, and on Instagram at Jon Weeks. And the links to that are in the show notes, so people can get in touch with you there. Actually, thank you very much.
And that does it for this week's episode of the Southampton Delivery Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope that you've enjoyed it. Special thanks this week goes out to Jon Weeks. You can find him on Twitter at JonWeeks5 and on Instagram at Jon Weeks. You can find him on voiceovers and on the radio and on the PA at St. Mary's once we get back there. I am very much looking forward to you getting to listen to him, because that means football is back, and that's something we're all waiting for. But of course, there are things that are slightly more important right now, like the health of the entire world. So I hope that you are staying in. Several people reached out last week after the newsletter, and I said that my wife has actually tested positive for the virus. She is fine. We should be off quarantine, in a couple of days, and that will be nice. But until then, we remain in the house, kind of devoid of human contact. So the dog is important at this point, and so is the rest of my family, I guess. Don't laugh at me.
I was laughing at you.
I'm trying to record. This is serious business.
I understand that, and the dog has always been important, FYI.
Nah, debatable.
It's time to get a puppy!
If you'd like to get in touch with this show on Twitter or Instagram, you can do that. We're at SFCDELL_IVERY. We're also on Facebook at facebook.com/SFC Delivery. You can get all of those links and many more at SouthamptonDelivery.com. Let us know what you think. If you want us to address some of your questions, you can do that there as well. The show would not be possible without the partners of the show. Southampton Page is on Twitter and Instagram, at Southampton Page on Twitter and at Southampton Page 1 on Instagram. The logo design is by Matt Beeling of the We Are Southampton page on Instagram. All music for the show comes courtesy of the Free Music Archive at freemusicarchive.org. The intro song is Epic Song by Boxcat Games, and the end of show credits that you're listening to right now is Aim is True by Poddington Bear. I think that does it for this week. We'll have a newsletter on Friday, and we'll be back next week looking at something else. And hopefully we'll have a little bit more information on the future of the Premier League and Saints and the health of the rest of the world as well. I'm going to go pretend to walk the dog. Talk to you next time. And until then, remember that together, we march on.